So welcome to the Clyde and Lomond Heritage Podcast, again with myself, Paul Murdoch, and
myself, Robert Ryan.
Today we're going to talk about the Forth and Clyde Canal.
Yep. Indeed.
I wonder why it wasn't the Clyde and Forth Canal, but yeah.
Well, even in an alphabetical sense, it should be, shouldn't it? Yeah. I think...
well, the fourth part was finished first, wasn't it? The east part.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was all... I think it was an Act of Parliament in 1768 that decided that this was going to be built, but it was a private company that built it, and it was 150,000, right?
Right.
Was needed. Now, I know we'll love in this podcast to say how much that would be in today's money.
Yes.
So I took the precaution of looking that up, and it's 35 million. 35 million. But there was, I think there was 150 shareholders at £1,000 each. Or it might have been 1,500, £100 each.
We'll do the maths later.
Yeah, we'll do the maths.
But today though, that would cost a lot more.
Well, interestingly enough, when they did the canal up again to reopen in 2001, that's just about the amount that was spent reopening it. Not, I mean, it was made. They just had to clean it and get the locks.
You were saying earlier on, 35 miles.
35 miles and
39 locks.
39 locks. I think I noticed the problem with this, right away.
I guess there'd be certain places that need more locks than others as well. Because like the highest point, I think is 150 feet or something.
Well, to be fair, I think 16 of the locks were at Camlin. People that come from there call it Camlin. But Camlin and Falkirk, and of course, they were filled in at one stage, which isolated the Forth and Clyde from the Union Canal.
Right.
But they were replaced by the Falkirk Wheel, and that was how they managed to reopen it again.
And the Falkirk Wheel is that bit where the two big horses' heads.
The Kelpies.
Kelpies, and I was thinking the horses, but they're supposed to be Kelpies, aren't they?
Yeah.
The seahorses thing.
But So the area that I watched a Fife Robertson documentary on YouTube about this, and it was from 1962, which was when the canal closed.
63.
January the 1st, 63. You're right. You're right. But he called it, I quite like this terminology, that the canal traversed the narrow waist of Scotland, which is the narrowest point between the Irish Sea and the North Sea. Yeah, 35 miles. It followed the path of the Antonine Wall,
I was going to say, which was 1,700 years previous.
And they reckoned that it was they reckoned there hadn't been as big an engineering feat in between those two things.
No, they said that the two biggest engineering feats of millennia.
Yes,
really, where the Anthony's Wall and then the Forth and Clyde Canal.
Yeah.
And of course, the Romans developed the luck for the canal building itself because, as you say, they followed it. And they'd flattened a lot of the parts. I mean, they'd flattened and stuff. So the Romans, in a way, had helped the construction a wee bit.
Yeah. They certainly did. Well, certainly choosing the route. But what we have to remember is the context of the times. It was designed to carry passengers and carry freight. And the only competition in those days was the stagecoach.
Right.
And how many hours do you reckon the stagecoach took between Edinburgh and Glasgow?
Oh, maybe a day.
11 hours. Right, it was 11 hours. So when the canal opened, they offered a service whereby they would take passengers not when the canal opened, but once they established the link with the Union Canal in the 1800s, they offered a journey time similar to the stagecoach, but I can imagine it would be a lot smoother and quieter probably than the stagecoach.
Yeah. So just get this right, for me, the Forth and Clyde goes from pretty much Grangemouth to Bowling.
Yep. It was originally planned to go to Dalmuir, but yeah.
So then the Union Canal then connects that to Edinburgh, is that what it?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah, at Camlin.
Pretty much near Falkirk.
Yes, near Falkirk.
Oh, yeah. So, and like the construction and all the rest, it was the engineer, who was a civil engineer really, who kind of drew up the plans and got it built was John Smeaton.
Did he set about it?
He set about it. Aye. Just another John Smeaton, John Smeaton.
Yeah.
His namesake, who I've actually worked with.
Oh, really?
Aye. We did an asthma campaign together in schools and things.
Right.
And yeah, the other John Smeaton, by the way, was the guy who used to let people know, because there might be people who don't remember, who stopped a terrorist attack at Glasgow Airport by sort of jumping and taking one of the guys out that was involved.
Yeah.
And became a bit of a national, international hero because of that. Isn't it? A big tall guy. I wouldn't have messed with myself.
No.
He was there.
So just going back to that,
yes,
just very briefly about the Fife Robertson documentary. It's only 7 minutes, and people should really check it out. If you're younger than us, you won't know who Fife Robertson was. He famously advertised Lawson's sausages. Well, I used to wear a deerstalker, and he always portrayed himself, and he actually does in this video, portrays himself as middle class. I'm a middle class Scotsman, but he was such a good journalist and reporter, and it's all condensed into 7 minutes. People should look that out. It's called A Lament for the Forth and Clyde Canal by Fife Robertson. It's only 7 minutes. But in 1961, which was the last year he had figures for, the canal had only carried 500 tons of freight the whole year. So the writing was definitely on the wall.
Yeah, and it was a bit disappear at that point as well.
Yeah, and swing bridges in 1962 would have cost £300,000, whereas replacing them with an ordinary bridge was about £30,000. So the answer to 9 out of 10 questions is money, and it was there.
There's an interesting bit at Dalmuir actually where there's a drop bridge. Have you seen that? So I think there must have been a swing bridge at some point.
Yeah.
Like there's a road, there's the Barton Road basically goes
Yes.
across the canal.
Uh-huh.
And there's only about a metre or less,
Uh-huh.
So what they do is at that point, and this is when they upgraded it, they made it so the level of the water would go down.
Uh-huh.
And then the boats could go under the bridge.
Right.
Then they go back up again.
Mm-hmm.
So it's worth having a look at that. I think it's Britain's first drop bridge.
Yeah.
For the canal. Yeah. So there's a few different elements to the canal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of the other things is that I think would surprise people is that people naturally think of the docks in Glasgow being Govan, Anderson, Partick, Clydebank to a certain extent, the shipyards there. But one of the busiest dock areas in Glasgow was Port Dundas,
right,
which was on the Forth and Clyde Canal. Right. So around that whole area, you had chemical works, there was glass works, distillers, textile engineering, granaries, iron foundries, all sprung up at Port Dundas. Still a very busy part of Glasgow, and you can still visit the Canary Wharf, the wharf buildings. The different city. Sorry, you can visit the wharf buildings and see where the canal. Well, the canal is still there, but it's not quite the extent of the port that it once was.
Another really busy bit was Bowling Basin.
That's true.
Because that would be the entrance to the canal from the Clyde. And
uh-huh.
A lot of ships came in from, I guess, America and different places into the Clyde via Dumbarton. And,
uh-huh.
But the Bowling, and people go by in a train at Bowling Basin, we call it.
Yeah.
You see the wrecks of some of the old ships.
That's right.
Skeletons in there.
Yes.
And people often go, oh. And we actually did, with the Clyde Sitters, we did a film in the Bowling Basin. We've done one in the Firth and Clyde Canal, by the way. I'll put the both links up later on.
Mm-hmm.
But the Bowling Basin one got 62,000 views.
Wow.
And it was like, we're like, why? But just so many people had passed that at the train.
And they were curious. What is it? Do you know an interesting thing I read as well was, remember we did the Henry Bell podcast and we spoke about the Charlotte Dundas who had done her early trials in the Forth at the Forth end.
Yeah.
And they decided at that stage that the draft from the paddles was going to damage the banks too much.
Oh, right.
But we'll come back to that because there was a later time that steam craft were involved. But for the early years, it was all horse-drawn boats.
Was it?
Yeah.
Right.
It was.
Yeah, interesting. And like that's where the past obviously run alongside them because the horse.
Exactly. The towpath. So we know, that's where the horses towed the boats.
Just going back to the construction of it a wee bit. I mean, they got kind of permission to get started in 1768, I think, right?
That's right.
It wasn't finished until 1790.
That's correct.
And Smeaton actually died in 1792.
Yeah.
So he hopefully saw completion.
Well, Smeaton actually stepped aside, and because there was money problems about getting him paid, and there was a chap called Whitworth, I think, stepped in.
Right.
He stepped in at the kind of finishing stage, if you like.
I also looked into the construction itself, and a lot of the labourers were Irish navvies, I guess.
Yes.
A lot of them were Highland Clearance people as well.
That's right.
Highlanders who had been forced out.
And some of the money to pay for this, because there was a money crisis late on in it, some of the money from the confiscated Jacobite estates was used to pay
to build it.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Because you were still in just post-Jacobite Scotland, weren't you?
And there was also guys there who had fought in the 7 Years' War.
Yeah.
Who, ex-soldiers. But a lot of people working in that canal, hundreds and hundreds of them. There's a lot of accidents as well. They reckon over 100 people die of its construction.
Oh, aye.
There's mudslides, there was drownings, there was people getting trapped under.
Well, but at least 2 centuries before the words health and safety were put together. Yeah.
Exactly.
But they had that, they had one boat called the Swift, and that became known. Although the name of the boat was the Swift, and they were supposed to be known as the Rapid boats, they just became known as the Swift boats because this was a particularly elongated hull which cut through the water, didn't leave much draft, and could get up to the giddy heights of 10 miles an hour. And they changed the horses every 3 miles.
Right.
Aye. So
it's quite expensive then to run.
Well, absolutely. But remember, the big competition for the canal in the early days was the stagecoach, and they could pretty much compete on equal terms. There was a sleeper service from Glasgow to Edinburgh, and I think you would manage to get to sleep, even with the locks and everything in the canal. You'd probably manage to get to sleep a lot easier than in a coach. Because you can imagine what the roads were like.
One of the main reasons it's built as well is to avoid that huge, dangerous trip around the north of Scotland.
Yeah, that's right. Well, the fishing boats from Edinburgh used it to come over and fish in the Irish Sea. Right. Yeah, they did that. But I noticed a couple of things. That in the early days, the canal company ran track boats 3 times a week, and that was for passengers and freight. Right. These were enormous things. And they made a profit that way. That wasn't, the canal wasn't for their exclusive use or anything like that. It was just, that was how it went. But in those days, a 4 shilling first class ticket would get you to Edinburgh. Now I think that is one way. I think that was one way. And a second class one was 2 shillings. And you're going to ask me, well, how much would that be?
He's done it.
How much would that be in today's money? Well, the first class would be about £30 one way, so pretty expensive. Yeah, comparatively. But it was those and such as those.
There are very few people, not as many people use
ordinary. There wouldn't be so many ordinary folk.
No, I mean, it's to do with mass, isn't it, the new prices.
But having said that, the stagecoach was the early competitor, the later competitor in the 1830s was, of course, when rail came to Glasgow. And then eventually, the rail, I think the first one was from the company tenants who owned the chemical works at St. Rollock's. And they had a railway coming down through from Kirkintilloch to Glasgow. And somebody stood up that night and said, it's only a matter of time before we'll be able to travel to Edinburgh in a matter of a couple of hours, and London in under 20 hours.
20, yeah, but then that would be...
But then it happened quickly.
Quickly, and it was a lot quicker than 20 hours.
Yeah.
But the interesting thing is, to me as well, that go back to the Roman thing again, is that Antony's Wall really only lasted, the Romans only used it for 20, 30 years.
Yeah.
And then they had to back down to Haby as well.
Yes.
It was just too dicey. So, I mean, it lasted 20, 30 years, whereas the canals lasted 200 years.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if we've ever been in Clyde Bank on a Friday night, but
they're always a lot. No. We're out here.
But 1822 gave them a brief respite because that was the opening of the Union Canal.
Right.
And I think I've got it written down here what their busiest. Yes, the peak year of the Forth and Clyde Canal was 1868.
Right.
It was kind of downhill for the following nearly 100 years.
Yeah, but the railway would have been sparred down as the Barton by that time, 1850, I think.
Yeah.
So even when the railway was in the go, it was still doing well.
It was still doing well, yep.
It's taken a lot of like coal and things for industry in the shipbuilding, I would imagine.
Sure, yeah, and they also managed to get with these swift boats, they managed to get the journey down from Glasgow to Edinburgh for 6.5 hours,
Right.
which, as again, if you put context on that, then, it was okay for the
That's how M8's blocked sometimes, they can do that now.
Yeah, but the early days, they soon discovered a problem with the wooden boats was that they were getting damaged with the roots and the undergrowth and in the canal.
So they had to dredge it and stuff.
Well, rather than doing that, they changed their approach. They built steel boats. They built iron boats. So this was in the days before there was iron rolling mills. So the iron had to be hammered flat. Oh my. Can you imagine that? So that's why the hammermen were such heroes, such strong guys, because they'd be hitting that iron, a whole working day.
Just when you say hammermen, it got me thinking. I was across. I don't know what I was doing there.
Greenock. You're going to say that?
Yeah, the big statue.
Is that out there? Is that the same guy that did the Kelpies? Because it looks like that style,
doesn't it?
It's a fantastic piece of sculpture.
It's the only time we've ever seen it.
Yeah.
Hammermen, and we should
near Tesco in Greenock.
Yeah. And because we are called the Clyde and Lomond Heavy podcast, I was thinking we should go across the Greenock for a wee day.
Oh, absolutely.
There's loads of things to see.
The history in Greenock is
and we'll probably outdoor session. Maybe we'll go across and look at some of the.
Sounds good. You can pay for lunch.
Apparently, I'm paying for lunch. Sounds good. So that's maybe try and organise that now.
Yeah. So just getting back to what I was saying there, the first iron-hulled vessel was the Vulcan, and it was launched in 1819. It was built in Paisley,
right?
Weighed 12 tons. So that kind of brought the canal into the modern era.
And the modern canal boats we have now, I guess, would be based on some of those earlier boats as well. I mean, I don't know if they're built from a different kind of material now, but
yeah,
some of them are more.
I mean, these were iron hulls, it'll be steel and that kind of thing now. But the Vulcan, not only the first iron hulled boat on the Forth and Clyde Canal, but one of I'm not sure if it's the very first iron hulled boat, but it's certainly one of the very early ones.
It's interesting because likes of John Brown.
Yeah,
John Brown shipyards. We never actually was at the shipyards there, but they used his name. But he made his fortune from ironclad boats.
Right.
Way back in the early 1800s.
Right.
So, and also locomotives.
Aye.
But he mainly did it for the Navy. So it was like they had some of the first ironclad boats.
Aye.
For defensive purposes.
And it was Lord Nelson that recommended look, you're going to have to look at steam. You're going to have to look at iron hulls.
Doesn't it?
Aye.
I was also thinking about when it was commissioned in 1768, it was Marina George III. And I just happened to look a wee bit about George III, and he was the first Hanoverian to be born in Britain, and the first one to speak English as his first language.
Aye.
I know he reigned for 60 years. He obviously went a bit mad at the end. But,
yes.
Poor man, but so I'm saying poor man, he wasn't the most...
Wasn't really a poor man.
What they poor, I would have thought, but
it's worth noting that we've already mentioned the fact that the canal had fallen into disrepair and disuse by 1963. So that was when it closed. However, we have an optimistic end to the story, obviously, because in 2001, the canal reopened. The Millennium Project. Again, 36 million pounds worth of lottery money. And of course, the engineering marvel that is the Falkirk Wheel. That was, but I've just remembered looking at my notes, we'd missed out a wee, if I could just mention and I did say I would mention it earlier when we spoke about the Charlotte and Das.
Yes.
There was a family who were, the Aikens, George Aiken and his father, James, and they started pleasure trips on the canal. By the time it had, you know, the usage of the canal was falling away, they had 3 pleasure steamers on the canal at any one time. They had, I think they had 5 altogether, but there was 3 called the Fairy Queen, then there was a May Queen, and then there was a Gypsy Queen, and it was the one which was the most famous, and it was launched in 1905 and sailed until at least the Second World War, and that gave those and such as those, and probably, yeah, ordinary working people as well would save up to go for a wee pleasure trip. And he took them the 8
sailed down the Waverley.
Yeah, well, I dare say, but in those days, you know, the Waverley now is the last of a breed, whereas this was the heyday of the pleasure craft. And this guy Aiken, he opened up a bungalow tea room, and it was near just northeast of Kirkintilloch, just near Cumbernauld, and the name of the place is Craigmarloch. So it's still there. If anybody's tuned in from Craigmarloch, you'll know all about the history. But so he put on a putting green, he had a swing park for the kids, that sort of thing.
I wonder if any of that still exists.
I doubt it. No, I doubt it. But
let us know if it does.
Yeah, if it does, then please. But anyway, so I did forget to mention that there was lots of pubs along the route. They would stop, people would get off, they get off at Kirkintilloch, they'd get off at wherever else, and enjoy a wee drink and all that sort of thing.
I mean, there still are pubs along the route.
Oh, aye.
Canal, like Glenlisset and things like that.
That's right. That's right. And I mean, with the reopening of the canal, I'm sure there's plenty of people avail themselves of the services. Right. So although it opened again in 2001, you know, it's actually closed just now for quite a long stretch.
I know certainly it looks a wee bit unused in certain bits.
Yeah.
We can walk, I mean, it's used, the towpath is used by cyclists and walkers.
Yeah, sure.
Mostly nervous walkers and fast cyclists. But it's like,
yes. Well, I know that.
Just ring your bell if you're coming up behind.
I know somebody take my dog's walks in these places that the cyclists come up and surprise you. But
some nice ones.
The good news is that just now, from the information I can gather, the canal's locked. The canal's closed from lock number 3 to lock number 16. Yeah. But the Falkirk Wheel is still open,
right?
So people can still go and see that.
So I wonder when that'll be open again.
Well, it says opening August 26th, just in time for the autumn and the colder weather. But the good thing about that is that it was probably obvious to those that reopened in 2001 that maintenance was going to be required, and at least it's been attended to.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully it opens all the way from Bowling all the way to Grangemouth again.
Yeah.
I must actually have a trip in it myself one day. It'd be quite a nice thing to do.
Yeah, it'd be good.
But yeah, so that's the history of the Forth and Clyde Canal. We'll probably wrap it there.
Yeah.
Just quickly to say as well that as far as the natural heritage goes, there's kingfishers, swans, moorhens, a plethora of nature.
Indeed.
All around the canal. If you walk from Bowling Harbour along towards the Muir,
butterflies,
all sorts of plants. Interesting plants as well. So have a look. And at this point in time, you thing called a butterbuck, which looks a bit like a big rhubarb leaf.
Yes.
And they used to use it for wrapping butter. Apparently the leaves. That's
right.
Its name. There's lots of things to look at around the canal as well as travelling on it. So until next time, I hope you enjoyed this wee episode. It's bye from me, and it's
goodbye from him.
I think somebody's done that before.
Somebody doesn't.
See you then.
Cheers.